I'm Lisa Shepard, and I am the Executive Director of the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism. The mission of the CJCP is to enhance professionalism among North Carolina lawyers, judges, and law students, a mission which it has been doing since 1998. One of the ways that the CJCP does this is to sponsor this historical video series, which is a collection of video interviews of distinguished lawyers, judges, and professionals from across North Carolina. The CJCP began filming these video interviews in 2000 as a means to preserve the thoughts of these bar leaders on the legal profession and on professionalism issues. All of the videos in this series are available to you on the CJCP website and the CJCP's dedicated YouTube channel. We are so fortunate to have had many distinguished members of the North Carolina Bar over the years, and they have much accumulated wisdom to share with us. It is important to understand that the practice of law is a profession, and doing it well requires not only substantive knowledge that one gains in law school and from studying for the bar exam, but also the value of experience learned from other lawyers. I hope that this video series will give you not only a fresh insight into the person being interviewed, but also some meaningful information about how to be a better lawyer in your own practice. Enjoy, and remember, esse quam videri. Strive to be professional in all that you do, rather than to merely seem so.
Good morning, and welcome to the Chief Justice Commission on Professionalism historical video series. My name is Don Bridges, and I'm here in Lincoln County in the offices of the Jonas Law Firm with Harvey Jonas. Harvey is one of the giants of the North Carolina Bar and certainly of the 27B Judicial District. Harvey has been admitted to practice as a lawyer in North Carolina since 1942 and of course has many experiences that he can share with his fellow attorneys that have come about over those years. His stature with the bar was recognized in 1989 when the North Carolina Bar Association inducted him into the General Practice Hall of Fame. He's also served our district with distinction as a bar counselor with the North Carolina State Bar during the years 1983 through 1991. Harvey, thank you so much for being here today and giving me an opportunity to meet with you and share some of your experiences with the bar.
Don, thank you so much. I really appreciate the fact that you're sitting here with me today and sort of holding my hand and helping me through what I feel is sort of an ordeal on my part. But don't misunderstand me. I am so appreciative of the Commission giving me this opportunity to go down on tape, and I'm a great believer in history. I think it's important to preserve what folks have accumulated in their minds over the years, and it's an honor and privilege, and I thank the Commission, and even more than that, I'm so happy to have the Chief Judge of 27B, Don Bridges, here to take care of me.
Well, thank you. This is a real treat. Now, you were born into a family of lawyers here in Lincoln County, and you've practiced now for about 65 years with the Jonas Law Firm. What are some of the earliest memories you have of your contact with the legal profession, even going back to your childhood?
Well, Don, I'll go back a little bit beyond my memory. I want to go back to 5 years before I was born. I was born in 1919, and in 1913, my father and his brother, Charles A. Jonas, formed the Jonas Law Firm. My dad graduated from law at Georgetown University, and Uncle Charlie graduated at Chapel Hill. They both been in undergraduate school at the University of North Carolina. My dad came back to Cherryville, and Uncle Charlie came here, and they practiced together. And shortly, my dad moved down to Lincolnton, and they were in the same office. They continued that for a long time, and finally, sons came along, and Uncle Charlie's son went in with him, and Dad separated. But it's been a great, I think it's almost an institution. If I can just live 5 more years, I'll be here when the 100th anniversary of the law firm comes about.
And that's,
I'm sort of shooting for that thing.
yes, sir.
Now, the firm as it is now, I'm no longer a partner. I'm out of counsel, and I take care of my clients on estate planning, estate administration, elder law, things of that nature. Our main partner is Richard Jonas, who's the son of Congressman Charles Raper Jonas, and Dick takes care of real estate, general business law, estate planning, things of that nature. Next in line is Jonathan Ryan, which you know well, has served in the state legislature and is an important member of our firm. He's really the trial counsel, main trial counsel. He handles marital differences, corporate law, business law. He's into banking right sharply. As a matter of fact, he's started banking his own here in Lincoln, as you know. Next in line is my granddaughter, Rebecca Jenkins Pomeroy, who is the fourth generation of Jonas blood in the law firm. She's been here now 8 years, and she's a fine young lawyer. She is following in my footsteps after having worked with social services for about 4 years. She now takes care of the elder law and the estate planning and administration, and also helps Dick with the real estate law. Her husband is Todd Pomeroy, who's a member of the firm, and he's our criminal lawyer. He takes care of all the dope addicts and folks of that nature. Finally, then we have Jeremy Wilson, who is understudy to Jonathan Ryan. He's an associate at this time, and the others are all partners. It's a good firm, well-rounded firm, and we try to serve the people of Lincoln County.
So you truly have a family firm.
About what it amounts to.
It spanned 4 generations.
Sure.
Wow. I'm sure that's been a source of real joy for you to be able to practice with family members. Let's go back to your early memories. I understand that even as a small boy that you spent some time visiting in your dad's law firm.
Well, as a matter of fact, I spent a whole lot of time in his office and with him in court. He was a general practitioner, as most lawyers in small towns were at that time. You had to take anything that walked in the door, and Dad took criminal cases, civil cases, wills, anything that came in, he would try his best to handle. And he, I don't know whose idea it was, but I started even in primary school, going to his office and sitting with him and going with him to court and watching him and the other lawyers there. And that continued through high school. When I went to Chapel Hill, of course, that terminated, but I kept, even when I was at Chapel Hill, coming back in the summertime and spending time with my dad. And to me, that is really the basic advantage that I had over most students, and I have now over most lawyers, because over that period of 15 years or so, 10 to 15 years, I sort of developed a feel for what was right, what was proper, what should be against the law. You know, tort law is that way. Tort law is based on natural law. And I had a feel for that. That was my easiest course in Chapel Hill. And I did well in law school. I finally got to be editor-in-chief of the Law Review, and number 40 was my volume, but I was editor only because two things happened. My friend Lamar Gudger and my friend Ed Hinsdale were both called into service, and they couldn't beat me out. We were a real close three-way race for editorship, and they were good friends, and both of them are no longer with us, but we got along so well in Chapel Hill. It's a great law school. I think the greatest in the state. There'll be those who won't quite agree with that, but it was a great law school. And I graduated there in the spring of 1942, shortly after Pearl Harbor.
So you began your career during the war years, and I'm sure that the war had a big impact on your life during that time.
It did indeed. You know, when Pearl Harbor was attacked, there was an outpouring of civic pride, civic feeling that our country should not be treated that way, and so many folks volunteered early on. Ed Hinsdale didn't have to volunteer. He was in the Marine Corps Reserve and was called into active duty. I don't remember just what happened to Lamar Gudger, but he had to go too. And I volunteered in the early spring of '42 to be in the officer rank in the Navy. But they let me stay out to complete my course of education and to take the bar exam. Shortly after that, I did go into the Navy and took my 60-day wonder training at Princeton, was sent right straight to Key West, Florida, where I was in the convoy control office there. And that was a bad time. In the late fall, early fall of 1942, the straits between Key West and Cuba were about 75 miles wide. That's a pretty narrow thing when you go to run the convoy through it, because convoys generally scatter all over a large area. There'll be merchant ships, there'll be tankers, and there'll be sub-chasers and YMSs and destroyers, other escorts to protect them from the subs. But the German subs would come into those straits, and during that particular period of time, they were blowing up tankers and blowing up ammunition ships and things. It was a pretty hairy time. Fortunately, I didn't have to go out on any of those ships. I did, however, go out on a blimp a time or two, and I haven't told you about that before. That was before the time of radar, and the escorts would change at Key West. They'd come out of the Gulf Coast, then escorts would go out of Key West and rendezvous and going up the East Coast or down to Africa, and these would come in to await another convoy. But sometimes they just have a devil of time finding each other out there. Somebody came up with a bright idea and put a blimp up overhead, and the blimp could see both of them, and he said, "Come on over this way, boys," with his lights, Well, that didn't work out too well. We tried it for about 2 months, I think. It worked pretty good, but when you really needed that kind of help was in bad weather. And a blimp can't get along very good in bad weather, so that idea was finally abandoned. Then another thing that happened in Key West was of great importance to me. In the spring of '43, I got so lonesome I couldn't stand it, and my girlfriend sort of got lonesome too. So I came to Lincoln. We got married in February of 1943. She came down and lived with me there in Key West, Florida for a full year. We had a great life together and had many friends in the service. That some of them are still living, some of them are not. But
whatever became of that girlfriend?
She's responsible for all these 5 great grandchildren. We live together now at Abernathy Laurels up at Newton. And she's a real joy to me. I think she has been the inspiration to me throughout my adult life.
And of course, you're talking about Celeste.
Celeste Abernathy.
Yes.
From there, from Key West, in 1944, I was sent to Pearl Harbor and Honolulu. I worked in the Port Directors Organization out there, and that was, of course, Celeste couldn't go with me out there. But that was a good life. It was sort of in the backwash of the war, but we got to see the ships coming through, going on out into the Pacific. And one of the stories I want to tell you about the war has to do with that fact. Ed Hinsdale, who I really think is the best friend I ever had, we were very close to each other and kept in touch during the war. I knew he was on the Saratoga, and that she was coming into Pearl Harbor, so I went down. He knew I was there, so we got together and visited around. I showed him Honolulu and Pearl Harbor, and he showed me the Saratoga, and honest to God, that was the most magnificent war machine I've ever seen. That doggone thing was 3 football fields long, 910 feet. And it made me think of a huge Swiss watch Everything was just perfect. It ran just like a clock. All the men knew exactly what to do. All the planes were loaded on the ship, and it was a great ship. Finally, Saratoga left after about 3 days and went on out into the islands north of Australia, and actually ended up on patrol into Iwo Jima in January, February of 1945. And at that time, she was by herself with 3 destroyers as escorts. And Ed told me that there was an overcast day, and the kamikazes came in, and 5 kamikazes hit that ship. And then 1 bomb fell on the ship in addition. Kamikazes were sort of like the 9/11 crap. Same general thought. The kamikazes were small planes, but they were loaded with gasoline and ordinarily had a bomb aboard. So they did a hell of a lot of damage, just like the big aircraft, the big planes flying into the Twin Towers loaded with avgas did so much damage up there. Same principle. Well, at any rate, Saratoga came back to Pearl Harbor en route to the west coast of the United States to be repaired and refitted. And again, I went on a tour of the ship with Ed Hinsdale, and it was just absolutely astonishing the terrible amount of damage had been done to that beautiful ship. She then went on back to Bremerton, I believe, and was repaired and rejoined the war later on.
Yes.
Had a great career. The other tale, can I tell this other
Yeah, I
tale
understand
about
you
that?
have another story from the war years also that not quite as serious though.
This has to do with while Celeste and I were in Key West. They had some bars down there. You know, Key West was, they either had a whole lot of conks, those old Cubans that came over from Cuba and lived there for many, many years, or the rest of them were all servicemen, mainly sailors, one kind or another, and the Air Force had a base there, but it was mainly Navy town, and they had a sub-training station there. So we had a lot of subs in there from time to time. And one of the bar owners concluded that the way to really get rich was to fill up his bar with servicemen drinking all the liquor that he could push off on them. And so he arranged to have a good act of some kind come down from the mainland to put on a show, fill up his bar for 2 or 3 nights and then go on back. Well, the one night I particularly remember was when Sally Rand was brought down. Now, you may not remember Sally, but she was really, I know you remember Marilyn Monroe, who was my favorite of all time's folks. But Marilyn Monroe of the 30s and 40s was Sally Rand. She would dance completely in the nude, and she had 2 huge ostrich fans. She would keep one in front and one behind, and then she'd switch them. But when she was switching, she always covered the vital parts so you didn't get to see except her head and her feet and these ostrich feathers. Well, Celeste and I went there the first night, and it was just a great show. Second night, it was occupied by servicemen. We didn't even need to take another look at the show. But Sally got so carried away with the reception that they gave her that second night that she came down off the stage, down among the tables, and walking around in the tables doing those fans and hiding everything that was important. And she got too close to the table where there was an old grizzled chief petty officer sitting. He just reached out and bit her on the rear end. He did. No question about the fact that happened. Well, she just raised hell and terminated her stay at Key West and insisted that chief be court-martialed. Well, if you know anything about the Navy, you know that it is absolutely based on the chief petty officers and the warrant officers. If it hadn't been for them, the Navy couldn't have been turned loose with we ensigns who'd been trained for 60 days or 90 days. And everybody knew the chiefs were important to the Navy, especially the chiefs on submarines. Well, the captain felt like he had to have a court-martial. He knew the ship was about to go out, so the sub that the chief was on. So he called a court-martial for the next day. They listened to Sally Rand, they listened to 2 or 3 impartial witnesses who testified, and finally they concluded that it was a terrible thing that the chief had done to that young lady, that fortunately no scarring was done, but that they felt that after having been out on the sub for 6 months, he had due provocation to do it. Found him not guilty. He went away on his submarine.
Now you mentioned that.
That's a true story.
Yes, sir. You mentioned that you have always also been a great fan of Marilyn Monroe. I understand you have a prized memento of Marilyn Monroe.
I don't know what this has got to do with professionalism, but it keeps me feeling better anyway. Marilyn Monroe was such a beautiful gal, and there's a picture about the size of this, maybe that whole frame, the entire picture, is Marilyn Monroe without a thing in the world on. Nothing. Completely nude, and she's on a red velvet bed sort of thing, and that's all you see.
But tastefully done, no doubt.
Tastefully done, of course. You'd see interesting things, but you couldn't see everything. But at any rate, a friend of mine was running drive-in theaters here in Lincoln back when Marilyn first started out, and it happened that he was buying film from a company in Charlotte, and the film company wanted to promote Marilyn Monroe. So they gave the theater owners each a copy of this Marilyn Monroe poster. Well, Buford Griggs was a good friend of mine. He ran the drive-in theaters in 2 or 3 counties. They gave him one, and he gave it to me. And I hid it in a West Publishing Company calendar behind December in my office. Every now and then I'd go in there and look at Marilyn. And finally, though, we were getting ready to sort of move out of that office into another one. So I took Marilyn over to Bud Early, who did some framework right across the street from us. And he and I came up with the idea of a double frame. Beautiful frame, about the size of that frame. On one side is Marilyn Monroe. On the other side, a complete different picture of a farm cart with flowers on it. And I took it home. Celeste didn't know about Marilyn. But I took it home and I said, now, Shug, this is my side. This is Marilyn. When my friends with me, we're going to look at Marilyn Monroe. We're going to put it in my den. When your friends, when the church folks come, we're just going to turn around and make them look at the farm cart. And that's a true story.
Now that's the kind of creative thinking you need to practice law in any age, isn't it?
That's the way to keep a wife happy.
Now, after the war, you came back and joined the Jonas law firm. What would you tell us about some of those early years in your practice?
Well, when I first came back, my dad was still living, but he was desperately ill, and Uncle Charlie, his brother, actually was not able to practice anymore. So I came back to practice with my dad, although he rarely came to the office. And C.R. Jonas was practicing by himself. Both of us here in Lincoln, though. Well, in 1952, he was elected to the United States Congress, you remember. And he called me over and said, now, I've got to have somebody to run this office. I've got a good practice, and I'd like to just turn it over to you. And you we'll put together again the Jonas & Jonas firm. He and his dad had been operating that way, and we agreed to it. He said, now, I want to tell you one thing, though. If you take over this office and I go to Congress, I never want to see your name on anything that comes into my office as congressman. I never want you to talk to me about anybody that wants a favor done or anything like that. You can send people to me if you want to. You can tell people to write me if you want to. But I never want to see your name or hear you about anything that has to do with my congressional duties. He was there for 20 years, and we adhered exactly to that principle. He was a good congressman. He was a good man. He didn't fool around with the Page boys. He didn't take too much money. He operated on very little money, but he was a great congressman. And at any rate, I took over the firm, and the main thing that I did for 20 years was insurance company defense law trials. We had good clients. I had Nationwide, Allstate, Travelers and several others. Grady Stott was in Gastonia. He had the same thing in Gaston. I think he also worked Cleveland. But Grady and I cooperated and worked together and discussed cases. And hardly, we had, I believe we had 3 terms of Superior Court a year in Lincoln County at that time. And hardly a term of court went by that I didn't have either 1 or 2 civil defense cases to try. I did very little work for the plaintiffs. I would insert here that, to the best of my knowledge, our firm has never sued a doctor for malpractice or a lawyer for malpractice. We have built into our firm a feeling that doctors are trained to do good, and they do good, and that if they make a mistake, they should, to some extent, be absolved of responsibility for it. I don't think he had an intention of doing it. Now, lawyers will disagree with me. There are good lawyers who thrive on malpractice suits, but our firm will not do it. We have defended malpractice cases, particularly along with John Golding from Charlotte, who, in my opinion, was, during his prime and even to now, the best malpractice defense lawyer in this section of the state. Really a great lawyer, and I was privileged to try cases with him.
Who are some of the people that you consider to be most influential to you in your practice, both in your younger years and throughout your career?
Don, I have to first give credit to my wife. I think she's looked after me and put up with the idea that law is a jealous mistress, as you know. She has to put up with a lot of things I do that she wouldn't otherwise do. But she's been kind to me and helped me. My daddy also trained me over a period of 15 years and instilled in me the idea that a lawyer has an obligation to serve the public, to try to take care of folks who are not able to take care of themselves, to try to ease the conflict that arises between citizens. Beyond him, Congressman, my cousin, first cousin, Congressman Jonas, was a great help to me throughout my career. Also, I've been blessed to know quite well 2 Chief Justices of our Supreme Court. Bill Bobbitt frequently came to Lincoln and to hold court, and of course Susie Sharp was here too. I didn't get to know Susie too well, but Sarah Parker, I think one of her first terms of court was here in Lincoln County, and she became a very close friend. When I was on the Bar Council, Judge Bobbitt and Susie Sharp were sort of going together at that time, and they attended all of the social functions of the bar. So Celeste and I got to know him quite well. Another person that I've been privileged to know and to admire is Justice Harry Martin. Yeah. Harry was a good friend of Lamar Gudger. I knew him in law school and sort of lost touch with him until I got on the Bar Council. And after being on the council, I served on the Client Security Fund, and Harry was there as a member of the committee. He's one of the great individuals that I know. He's so deeply interested in the welfare of people. You may not know, I'm sure all lawyers know, Harry has written the code for the Cherokee Indians. He's Chief Justice of the Cherokee Indians. That's just one of the many things that Harry Martin has done. He was an inspiration on the Client Security Fund. He wanted to do what was right. He felt that any lawyer who stole from a client ought to be consigned to hell, but that at least it was our duty to try to make up to the client for the loss that he had sustained from his lawyer. Those, I think, those people have been an inspiration to me in my career.
Now, I know anyone who's practiced law for more than 60 years would certainly have developed a lot of guiding principles to keep you on track during those years. What are some of the points that you developed for yourself, your guiding principles or rules that you tried to follow in your own practice?
Well, I think a couple basic things. One is, and this really didn't bother me in the early part of my career, but even in this present age, drugs are such a constant threat to the general public. And unfortunately, some lawyers get involved with drugs. And that is just the beginning of a down road. Should be avoided at all costs. Another thing, a lawyer should treat his trust fund as absolutely inviolate. I had a good friend in Charlotte who dipped into his trust fund when he knew that he had fees earned that were to be received within the next 2 or 3 months. He dipped into his client's trust fund in order to take care of a personal matter. Well, unfortunately, the fees didn't come through. He was caught and was disbarred. One of the great lawyers in this nearby town, and he'll never practice law again on that account. I think it's important to be honest with your client, to try to do justice for your client, to be prepared in what you do for your client. I would say that any young lawyer should know that you don't have to take every case that comes into your office. If someone comes into your office and you think he doesn't have a claim, and he says, I don't care whether I've got a claim or not, I'll pay you to do this for me. That's the time to let him go. Because if you violate your own principle for a cash coming from your client, you're doing something you absolutely should not do.
And I believe when we spoke earlier, you mentioned that in particular was one of those areas where you felt you had a great advantage by your early exposure to the law.
I think that's true. As I said a good while ago, tort law is my favorite at Chapel Hill. And I think a young lawyer has to develop that feeling. A young lawyer has to know that he doesn't have to take every case. If someone comes in and you just don't like his looks, or if he comes in and says, well, I had Joe Blow from the lawyer and he sold me out, run him off real quick. But by all means, you must stand to your own principles, and 90% of the value that you can be to a client is to tell him whether you think he's right or wrong. And you must do that. You can't violate that principle.
Now, we've both alluded to the fact that you've served with the state bar as a bar counselor for 8 years from this district. What memories do you have from that experience, and how did that experience affect you with your practice and in your life?
Well, I think Grady Stott was responsible for the fact that I got appointed to the grievance committee. Grady had been on it for his entire tenure on the council, and he felt that it would do me good to be there. And it really is one of the great things of my life. And I was on the bar council representing the people of Lincoln and Cleveland County, and I got to see the terrible things that lawyers get involved with. You know, lawyers do wrong things sometimes, and they have to be held accountable for it. On the other hand, sometimes the lawyers do things that the clients don't appreciate. It may be that the lawyer was acting properly, but the client didn't feel so and will file a complaint. It's important that the grievance committee look into those things with care and protect the innocent client, but also protect the innocent lawyer. It was a great experience. I wouldn't take anything in the world for it. As counselor, the people in your district frequently call on you for sort of offhand ethics ideas as to whether they should do something or not. And I've tried to help our lawyers in that respect some from time to time. Don Pendleton is now our district representative on the council, and Don makes an annual report to the bar every time we have a meeting. He's doing a great job. And it's such an honor to be on the bar council. You get to meet good lawyers, great lawyers throughout the state. The council does great work. I think we're fortunate that we're fortunate in that we're able to police ourselves rather than have some government agency trying to keep order among our bar.
Harvey, either through that experience with the State Bar Council or through your experience in general, how has your view been shaped as to the responsibility that we as lawyers owe to each other when it comes to matters of ethics and professionalism?
Well, somebody was telling me, I don't know, maybe you told me this tale. Said you were a young lawyer years ago that came into this small town, and he was so careful with his conduct that if he was walking down the street and saw another lawyer's client, which was involved in some sort of a matter, coming to meet him, he'd cross the street to get away from that client so he couldn't be accused of talking to the other lawyer's client. I've always felt that any group of people, any civilization, without a system, without a legal system, is chaos. I also felt that any legal system without lawyers would be chaos. I was fortunate to travel to Russia with a group of lawyers one time, and we were so disappointed with the attitude of the lawyers over there. They all feared the state. We don't fear the state. We'll take on the state just as quick as we'll take on anybody else if our client deserves it. Strange thing about Russia, we asked them to take a look at their jails. Said, we don't have jails over here. I think they sent them all to Siberia or something like that, but that was an interesting trip.
One of the unique customs in Lincoln County, and we've now tried to adopt a similar custom in Cleveland County, is the lawyers have a weekly bar luncheon together. Now, can you tell us a little bit about the history of that practice and how it came about?
Don, this started off, I would think, more than 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, a long time ago. We had a lawyer who got in trouble, whether it was a mistake or whether it was intentional, nobody really knew, but Clarence Leatherman and Don Pennon and I were designated by our district judge, who was John Friday, to call on this lawyer and talk to him about it. He had been approached by the sheriff, and he denied to the sheriff that he had taken any money in. When we went to see him, I think he was shocked that the three lawyers showed up to investigate the situation. We told him why we were there, and he said, well, I don't remember taking anything, but let me check my records and I'll talk to you in the morning. Well, he did. We met with him the next morning, and when we came in, he not only admitted that he had taken it, he said it was an absolute mistake, and I've prepared you a check to refund that money in full to that lady. I'm so sorry it happened. It was unintentional, but we felt that we had a duty to report it. Complaint was filed, and it was heard by the state bar, by the grievance committee, and was disbarred. Shortly after the occurrence, when he admitted to us that he had taken some money, the word sort of got out in the community. You know, if something bad happens to a lawyer, everybody knows about it by the next morning. And the word got out that a lawyer had taken some money, and I had clients call me up, and he would say to me, now, you're not going to take my money, are you? I said, no, never have, and never intend to, but we got to worrying about the effect on the lawyers in general throughout the county. So the three of us met and invited 2 or 3 lawyers to meet with us, and presented them with the idea that maybe the lawyers ought to just get together and eat lunch together, talk to each other, sort of get over this hump. And so we agreed and started meeting every Thursday for lunch. It was not a compulsory thing. You didn't have to go. If you were tied up or you just didn't want to go, you didn't have to go. And usually we didn't talk about any legal matters. We just sort of fellowship, had a good time together. Of course, during that particular time, we talked about the effect of this dishonesty on the part of our comrade. But that continued to operate, and I think has been of inestimable value to the lawyers of Lincoln County. You can't really get mad at a fellow if you know him and sit down to eat with him and enjoy his company. You'll be friends. That'll help you in court, help you wherever you are. And it certainly is great. We met Thursday. You met with us, incidentally. There were about a dozen of us there, and it's been great for our county.
And I'll just say to you, I think as a testament to that the Lincoln County Bar is known throughout this part of the state as being a bar that's collegial and professional and just a little different from some of the other local bars. And I think that's been a big factor that's contributed to that.
I thank you for saying that, Don. I feel that way about it myself. And I have encouraged lawyers in other counties to try to set this up. Now, of course, this would not be possible in Charlotte. My God, they've got more lawyers down there than we got people in Lincoln County. And but where it can be done, it can be of great benefit to the lawyers, and by being benefit to the lawyers, to the public in general.
I know that over your 65 years or so in practice, you've seen a tremendous number of changes. What are some of the most notable of those differences you have seen between the time you began practice and the times that you see now as you continue with your practice?
Well, there's so many. Let me start off by this fact. When I started going to my daddy's office, every lawyer in town had his office on the second floor. I think the basic reason for that, well, there were two reasons. Number one was economy. Lawyers didn't make a whole lot of money back then, but the main reason was that lawyers felt that a client from up in Northbrook coming into town would not want to be seen going into the downstairs office of a lawyer. What's he been into that he has to go see a lawyer about? So he could go up steps where there was 3 or 4 dentists and a doctor and a lawyer and various other folks. Nobody was knowing he was going to see a lawyer. Of course, now all lawyers have their office on the first floor for the convenience of their clients, particularly the older clients. There have been tremendous changes in the mechanics of the office. For example, if you go downstairs, I'll show you a complete room full of ALR. You don't do that anymore. You get ALR on a disc. All of the laws come on a disc. I remember when my daddy, when I went to his office, he used a Code of North Carolina, which was a red book about that thick, and that was his only law book. But he was able to go over to the child's office next door if he had to look at a report. But that has changed completely, so that you can go to your computer and call up any law that you're interested in, and there it is. The computer has made a tremendous difference. I remember my daddy used to type all of his work with 2 fingers on an old Underwood typewriter. And back then we didn't have copy machines, so if he wanted to make 9 copies of something, he'd put 9 sheets of white paper, and in between them he'd put 8 sheets of carbon paper. He'd hit that keys so hard that it'd go right through all those and make a proper impression on the bottom sheet. Well, that got along fine unless he made a mistake, in which case he had to roll it up a little bit, go through and erase all 9 of those and do it again. Now you just put it in a copy machine and it'll make 1 copy or 50, whichever you want. Perfect copies. Computers have also improved the drafting of legal documents. You draft a will and your client comes in and he says, well, now, I told you to give that to Jim. I didn't really want it to go to Jim. I wanted it to go to Bob. And you say, now, just hold still a minute. And you get your secretary and put that back in her computer. She pulls up the will, strikes out Jim, puts in Bob, and you don't have to proofread it. You don't have to do anything. Just print it. It's ready to go. That's such a time saver. Such a great advantage. Secretaries. I know big firms have always had secretaries. My daddy never had one. Secretaries are so important anymore. We have made a practice in this firm of bringing girls in from high school, right straight out of high school, and training them, educating them, seeing if they go to Gaston College or up to Gardner-Webb or elsewhere to improve themselves. And they are such great girls and such loyal ladies that you can't improve on a girl that you have trained yourself, that you love and she respects you.
And your firm, I understand, has actually paid for education for a lot of your employees.
We have. Another thing we've done is to sort of encourage what I call an apprentice program. We have a lot of young folks that we get to know. Maybe they don't even come into the office, but they'll say, well, now I've been watching Perry Mason on TV, and the thing I want to do is to be a lawyer. So we have always told them, if they're folks that particularly we knew, young folks, 15, 16 years old, come on up this summer and follow me around a couple of weeks. Let's see how you really like law. And if they like it for 2 weeks, come back the next summer and spend the whole summer with us. We don't pay them anything because we feel that we're doing something of benefit to those young folks, to let them see, number one, do they like law really, or are they just intrigued with it? And if they like it, are they willing to go through the time and trouble and turmoil of being qualified to be a lawyer? I think it's been great for, we have developed great young lawyers, both male and female. We've turned away or caused to leave folks who were intrigued with law but really not willing to do the job that it takes. So I recommend that to people. Those are the main things I think that have changed.
I know you have so many fond memories from your years in practice. And you're still making those fond memories, I'm sure. Can you think of any other stories you'd like to share with us?
I don't think so, Don. It has been a great life. It really has. I look forward to 2013, which I hope I can make. When I was a kid, I decided that I was born in 1919. I wanted to live to be 80 years old so I could get to see the turn of the century. And since that happened, my ambition has been to be at the 100th anniversary of the law firm.
Yes.
I've had so many friends. Let me tell you this, back when I was defense counsel for the insurance companies in Lincoln County, at that time, we did not have many folks moving into Lincoln County. The folks up in Northbrook intermarried and were kin to everybody, knew everybody. That's the western end of the county. And it was always my pleasure to have a jury trial before a Lincoln County jury because, and this is true also of Don Pendleton, he and I both, our families have their roots up in the western end of the county where they still make a little white liquor every now and then. But he and I would try cases before Lincoln County jury, and honest to goodness, we would know at least half the people on the jury and be related to almost half of them. Of course, they would never admit that they'd ever seen us before. It was a great life. It really was.
Harvey, what advice or pointers would you share with our young lawyers who are just starting out today, who are embarking on their career as you look back on yours? What kind of advice would you offer to them?
Well, I think it's important that the young lawyer make an absolute undying commitment to professionalism. I really do. If you go into the law for the purpose of making money, you'll make some money. If you get to do like some of our lawyers do and pursue big verdicts and things of that nature, but if you go into law with the idea that you want to help the people in your community, want to help, you know, when citizens rub together as you do in daily life, sometimes sparks fly. And one of the main duties of a lawyer is to ease that contact, to see that justice is done between the two factions, to see that people are treated fairly. I've got a little prayer that I want to read at the conclusion of this thing that will sort of show you what I feel is the basic principle that general practice lawyers ought to follow.
Yes. And I understand that the Methodist Church has always been a big part of your life, and I believe you've got a prayer is it from the Methodist hymnal?
It is indeed.
Okay.
I didn't know whether you'd let me use it or not.
Yes, sir. Please do.
But it is a great thing and I just stumbled on it about 2 years ago. I have to get my helpers here. Very short thing, and it's item number 456, which is easy to remember. Any Methodist can just look up 456, and this is what it says. O Lord, open my eyes that I may see the needs of others. Open my ears that I may hear their cries. Open my heart so that they need not be without succor. Let me not be afraid to defend the weak because of the anger of the strong, nor afraid to defend the poor because of the anger of the rich. Show me where love and hope and faith are needed, and use me to bring them to these places. And so open my eyes and my ears that I may this coming day be able to do some work of peace for thee. I think that's a good principle to follow.
Yes, sir. Amen. Harvey, thank you so much. Thank you for what you've done for this state and this community and what you're still doing as an example of professionalism in this community and in this bar. And thank you for being here. It's been a real treat
Don,
for me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your help.
Yes, sir.
And I'll never forget the kindness you've shown me through this ordeal for me. And I want to thank the Commission for allowing me to do this.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And we'll see you again on that 100th anniversary.
Good.